Hey everybody, it's Robert Ohotto, and we are live with my very first episode, I guess, of this web TV show, Your Intuitive Edge. I'm just going to check to make sure all the systems are go. There's a lot of moving parts behind this. I've actually engineered my own studio to do this, and I'm so glad to be back. A lot of you might have followed my Soul Connections radio show for the 8 years I did that. And if you want to go check that out, you can go to iTunes and get some of those downloads from that as podcasts. But it's a reboot. It's Robert, I don't even know, 5.0 by now. I'm not exactly sure. I'm just going to check to make sure. It looks like I'm streaming on Facebook Live. So I just wanted to give you guys a little intro into what this is and how it's going to work and all that great stuff. This is a brand new web TV show format. And I will also be making a lot of these available as podcasts. And it's all about, my intention with this is helping you really get an edge in your life with your intuition in all sorts of areas. So whether that's relationships, whether that's business strategy and planning, whether that's your family, making a big decision in your life, whether that's just how do you, have a more spiritual connection to yourself or assess how to hold your center in sort of areas where you lose power or you lose your center. We're going to explore so many things, and I'm so excited as we dive in as often as I can do this through all the different ways I'm going to do it. We're going to explore all those things, and I'm going to offer you, I think, essential instruction on how you can use your intuition in any given circumstance and really bang it out and get your intuition rocking in terms of maximizing what I would say is your optimal potential in every area of your life. Now, I'll keep it real, and part of what I think intuition and intuitive abilities are about is simply telling the truth. You've got to move beyond your bias. You've got to move beyond your history and your stories from your history. You've got to move beyond the stories of wishful thinking that you have and all the stories and drivers in your psyche that are pushing you to get to enough because you don't really feel that you're enough. There's so much that goes into getting a clear intuitive read. So what we'll be discovering and focusing on lesson to lesson, episode to episode, subject to subject, is all that stuff. And then eventually I'm going to open this format to where you can actually get live intuitive readings from me on camera together, and that's coming soon. But we're just going to first roll with everything here and make sure that we get all of our technical stuff figured out and mastered so that it doesn't become frustrating for all of us to follow along in this particular web show. So many moving parts when you do web broadcasts to the internet. So tonight, we're going to start from the ground level. And my intention is to teach you how most of you relate to your intuition through what I call is 3D. And I want to get you into multi-D, a holographic way to engage your intuitive skill sets in every area of your life, and just generally a way to live that way, a way to actually live that's intuitive. So I'm going to guide you through all the different things that I have found over the years that constitute intuitive skills, your energy senses, all of this. And tonight's where we're going to bang that out. We're going to bring it. So I just want to check in with my production team to make sure all is streaming okay across all the platforms. And so anyway, you can watch this on Facebook Live. I'll also, if you eventually do want to participate with me, you'll have to go through my broadcast system, which is called Crowdcast. And I will next week be giving you information on how to do that. So if you wanted to call in live and ask me a question or come on camera with me and get a reading, that's how that will work. And a lot of times what I'll do is that after we finish a show, I'll have, or finish what I want to say about something, I'm going to open up the forum to do intuitive readings around that topic on you. So but there's going to be some ways that we have to address, how to do that, how to plug yourself into our stream, and make sure that you know how to do that so you're not echoing in your microphone, and that's stuff that we'll cover behind the scenes with you. If you go to Crowdcast, follow me there and just sign up, and I'll give links to that next time. This time, just sit back, take in the lesson. I'm just going to be talking. Feel free to comment on Facebook Live or through Crowdcast. We've got over 300 people there already at Crowdcast. So let me just see. How am I doing, guys? Really looks great. Cool. All good on Facebook and oh my gosh, I'm loving this so far. Nothing is crazy. And hey, those of you on Crowdcast, how's it going? Let me just give a shout out to all my Facebook Live people. Let's see what's going on there. Anyway, it's so great to be back. I took a 2-year hiatus after my 8 years of doing radio, and now I'm doing web TV, baby. It's going to be really great. I'm super, super excited about it. And all right. I see you guys are seeing me on Facebook Live too. This is very exciting. So just for those of you who might be new to me, and just a little way of background, I'm a professional intuitive. I've been doing intuitive readings and intuitive work in the field for 15 years professionally. I don't really do private clients as much anymore because I've moved more to this, to teaching you and how to access and get on with your own intuition. So what I would say is that I really have a library of information to offer you on this skill called intuition. And I want to debunk a lot of that tonight, like what you might think it is versus what it really is. The difference between being psychic and being intuitive, there actually is a difference. And just generally a rundown and a look at what does it mean to function in a multi-sensory way. So you all know you have your 5 senses, right? And what I want to offer and teach you tonight is what's beyond that. We all have probably had moments where we had an insight that came out of nowhere. Maybe we heard something kind of in our head that pinged us to take a certain direction or action that maybe saved our lives or saved someone else's lives or guided us to a new opportunity. That is part of intuition. So let's just dive in. Anyway, I'm going to let you go to my website and read my bio. I don't want to waste time, talking about me. You can find out more about me there and just Google around and figure out. I've worked with Fortune 500 companies, lots of creative people all across the board in Hollywood, all that kind of stuff, in terms of developing intuitive strategy, and also have worked with thousands and thousands of people. And my skill set goes everywhere. So I'm excited to share that with you in this format. And just my intention with this is to empower you to what I call live in the optimal potential of your life. So I love the word potential. It's all about something that's in you already that has the inherent capacity of coming into being. That is what potential is. And this skill, intuition, is the edge of, and that's why I call it your intuitive edge. It is your intuitive edge that helps you get to living optimal potential in your life. So I try to stay out of best life, highest potential, stuff that starts to make things lesser or greater. Optimal to me is about being in the moment and living as fully through all you are in the moment and optimizing that moment and expressing your soul, expressing your destiny in the moment or your life generally. That to me means optimal. It's going to shift situation to situation. The optimal solution is always going to be, however, about what is possible in present time. Possible in present time. So that said, I would offer you that intuition to me is a skill of the soul. And we do have various other levels of intuitive skills that are very, I would say, survival based and driven. So let's jump in. Let's jump into all the different types of intuition there are. And so, in harmony with what I decided this first show should be about, which is, most of you, I would say you function in the 3D realm with your intuitive abilities. And there's nothing right or wrong about that. That's the base we all come from. So if you can imagine, you're born, and I'm going to throw in something a little esoteric here. I believe all of us have what I call soul agreements to be here. You actually have a life plan that your souls agreed to before you were born. But then you show up here, and then you're in that infant body, you're in your family, and you're in your culture and society, and now you start to develop. Now, at this first primal level, we all get, as part of being born, is survival gut intuition. That's how animal species survive. That's how you've survived a lot of the time in many areas of your life. That's that feeling in your gut when you go down a street and you kind of get this feeling of like, I should probably get out of here. It's a little dark, and that corner over there looks really dark, and there could be something lurking over there. I'm going to turn around and get the heck out of this alley. That's gut intuition. It's just, all of a sudden flags your gut and you get this feeling like, yeah, not a good move, man. I'm going to, get out of here and turn this around. So survival gut intuition is where we all began, and it's hardwired in. And even that can be overridden by other factors, which I'll get into later, and you won't hear that voice, but you all probably have a reference point of that voice right in here. It's right. I'm pointing to my belly. I'm doing both my heart and my belly, but then, speaking of the heart, we go to emotional intuition. This is where your emotions start to speak to you about situations like, someone does something to you and it pisses you off and you get angry. Anger is one of the most brilliant aspects of your emotional intuitive system. It tells you, I have just experienced a violation. I have just had my sovereignty and my esteem or my boundary violated. So when we get into emotional intuition, most of us tend to not listen. We'll shame it away. We are taught to shame that away. And we don't really listen to what our feelings are saying. And we're a culture that has given enormous power to the mind, which isn't that powerful, by the way. We're going to cover this. But instead of really focusing on, hey, maybe the emotions have a lot of data, and they do. So if you're depressed, sometimes we're in what's called a creative depression. Sometimes we're in a clinical depression. Sometimes we're just in a down day. But there's always information in all of those emotional states. So to kind of get into this cultural ethos that is really rampant in the culture of we're always entitled to feel happy, we should always aspire to feel happy or feel good, without opening your emotional intuitive system to the other, let's say, voices of guidance that come through your emotions, is to really short yourself greatly. So right here, right now, I would ask you to take a pause and go, wow, how well do I listen to my emotional intuitive system? How do I actually process anger? Do I even associate that as an intuitive flag that something's amiss that needs addressed? Or do you spiritualize it, mentalize it, and go, I shouldn't feel angry, or I shouldn't feel sad, or I shouldn't feel, even if you feel jealousy, that's a guidance into your esteem system, into something in you that's making you covet or envy something that someone else has, and that would guide you right in. That would be an intuitive guidance that would say, hey, this is an area where you don't feel like you're enough. Do you want to deal with that? Do you want to look at that? So that's your emotional intuitive system. And so as you begin to psychologically mature, let's say from birth on up, and become more sophisticated as a being, as a human being, you go gut intuition, and then you start to develop into your emotional intuitive system. And then you start to move from that to your heart, which is about the emotions, but it also connects you to something else. And this is the realm of creative and inspirational intuition. So this is where you get that sense of, I have this idea, I have this feeling going through me called passion. And it's guiding me to do something with my life, or pursue a study of something, or pursue creating something. And if it's a true intuitive passion, then you'll feel it. You'll just feel like this gives me this buzz around my heart and just sort of fills me up with this kind of joy. And even if I'm in struggle, it's the right struggle because it's connecting me to me. Intuition is a connecting force. It is a connecting force. Part of what it will always guide you to do is connect to yourself. Connect to yourself. So there's something that happens, I got to bring this in now, when we're in our intuitive development and we hit, survival and emotional, and we go to creative inspirational development in terms of our intuitive system. This is also where you will be invited to dialogue with something in your psyche called the shadow. Now I'm going to take a little pause and do a breakout session here and talk about the shadow, because we all have one. It's not going anywhere. And yet it can be, and very much oftentimes is, the arbiter of just how clear or clearly you hear your intuitive voices. So let me give you an example. When you do shadow work, when it comes to intuition, what you're looking at is what's unconscious in you, or the things you deny or repress about you, because maybe you feel like they would make you a bad person, or you would lose esteem if you admitted this and that about yourself, or whatever it is. The shadow has a lot to do with where you don't want to see something, or you're taught not to see something. And one of the guardians of the shadow that likes to shove stuff in it is shame. And I just want to connect this now. Let's keep connecting this back to intuition. If I haven't done, and I've always said this, the best intuitives, the best psychics, the best channelers, the best mediums, people that talk to dead people, they're those that have done a lot of shadow work on themselves. Because, check it out, you've got your human psyche, you've got your human ego, nothing right or wrong about that, by the way. You need an ego to survive, you need an ego to get through life. But you have a wounded ego too. And this wounded ego is really, another way I could say it, it's wounded identity. And it creates this vulnerability in your intuitive system because it doesn't let you hear guidance that might be, let's say, critical, or it doesn't let you hear guidance that points you toward dealing with things that you haven't dealt with. So your wounded ego has defense strategies that it's adapted that actually block clear intuition. Clear intuition will always guide you deeper into yourself. It'll guide you to becoming a spiritually mature adult, to taking self-responsibility for yourself, for knowing the possibilities in any situation. Clear intuition, but if you've got agenda, and this is shadow territory, agenda, bias, if you've got trauma that you have not yet integrated or dealt with, you are very much going to be susceptible to misconstruing intuitive data. So when we're at this heart space of intuitive development, we're bridging from survival, let's say, to the energetic realm of the soul. This is the territory, and these are very real to me, of guides, of, if you want to call them angels, of muses, of, I don't care what name you want to give, the creative forces that speak through your energetic senses and come through your whole system. But they will always be negotiating how clearly they can speak to you based on the shadow work you have or have not done. Now, shadow work is a whole nother show. But what I will say about it for now, it's not about getting rid of things and judging yourself more and shaming yourself more. It's actually exactly the opposite. It's about making a space for all of you to be okay. You're not going to like all of you. You're not going to like all that you see underneath your covers when you start to peel them back and look down. You're not going to like what's behind that door a lot of the time. But you're not going to get to know it, those sort of fire-breathing dragons back there, if you don't have compassion, which means to encompass or to suffer with. Let's take this encompass idea. Shadow work's about how much can you encompass, not like. Like has nothing to do with it. How much can you actually just let be okay? And check this out, this word connects to intuition. The more that you can let be okay, the more you permit yourself to perceive. So let me say it another way. The more you judge yourself or your psyche or what's in your shadow, the less your psyche will reveal to you. There's a paradox here when it comes to your esteem, because you have to have enough esteem. In other words, I call it soul esteem. You have to have enough of an anchor in some core knowing that you're already enough, so that you can see, let's just say, the S-H-I, you know what I'm saying, T, that's messing you up. A lot of shadow work's about addressing the things that are just getting in the way of you shining what you already are, which is what I call flawsome. You're a little bit of flawed, a little bit awesome, all mixed up in it, as we all are. And even that word itself gives us all a little bit more permission to be here, doesn't it? So it's not about this shame-based drive of getting to being this perfect, shiny person. It's about, I'm messy, I'm effed up, and it's all good. And if you can embrace that, this is the gift of shadow work. Not like it all, but just let it be okay. Your intuition is no longer negotiating your defense strategies against seeing your darkness, seeing your pain, seeing, all these things that are part of what make you you. We all have it. We all have our fire-breathing dragons. I'm always saying, the best thing you can do is hug them. I'm not a fan of the slay the dragon image. I think you hug them. They're breathing fire because they haven't been integrated. They haven't been communicated with. So now let's get back to your intuitive wiring here and the vulnerability of this area. Because if you're trying to create a clear channel to where you can get guidance that goes just beyond, the guidance you can kind of assess from your survival gut instinct, your emotional system, and then your, let's say, creative inspirational system. There's other levels here of guidance. And this becomes the channel. And shadow work becomes the arbiter, how clear that channel is to what you can and can't hear. So if I was one of your angels, and I was whispering in your ear and I was saying, here's the deal. You're a food addict. And I'm not judging you. I'm your angel. I don't judge. In fact, if I look at the technical layout of your system, here's how this works. You recruited the food addict to manage emotions you were too young to integrate. But now your health's at risk. You're overweight in a way that's not healthy for you. And, you're very much held back by what your next potential can do until we get some new program, software in the mix of your psyche that can manage your safety, security, and survival and esteem and all of the ways you process emotions. If we don't get a new software in that can do that, then we just can't go to the next level of what you can do in this life. Because the next level requires more vulnerability. It has much more of an emotional risk involved, and you're more exposed in the next level of your potential. And if that hit your system today with the addict running the show, you would eat yourself dead. So, I'm your guide and your angel. First things first, I got to tell you, we've got to deal with your addiction. But if you felt, I can't admit I'm an addict, there's too much shame with that, it's too loaded. Now you're in a gridlock with heaven and what your life can become and your own health, and go on and on and on. So I want you to take from that example and extrapolate for yourself any situation in your life where you're in gridlock. And I want you to know, a lot of people will say, I'm confused, I'm not getting guidance. You are getting guidance all the time. The real truth is you just might not like it, or you might not also be able to take it in just yet. And here's the thing I would say about intuition. And let's jump in. What does it mean to be psychic versus intuitive? Being psychic, if you look at that word psychic, it comes from the word psyche. And what it really means, it's a permeability, it's a openness to psychic energy. That's all that psychic really actually means. It means I can feel through empathy, through sensitivity, energetic fields, emotional fields beyond my own. Now, that also means I can feel beyond my own field, and other things outside of my field can get into my field. And that's what psychic means. Now, so if I'm in a room and I feel someone's angry. You've all been around someone angry. You've been angry. You can walk into a room and you feel it. You're like immediately like, whoa, someone ain't too happy here. That's just a noun. You see me? You feel me? It's like, that's all that is like, okay, they're not happy. They're angry. Okay, they're angry. What else is going on with that data? Nothing. Psychic is just perception and feeling of fields. And in this case, I would say beyond your own field. You feel someone's depression. You feel someone's sadness. You feel someone's anxiety. You feel someone's fear. If you have pets, they feel you all the time. You can see it. They feel your field all the time. We're feeling each other's fields all the time. That's what it means to be psychic. Let's keep it real. Now, that said, How's that different than intuition? Psychic is about feeling nouns. I feel depression. I feel anger over here. I feel, and I'm just using these words, by the way. I don't want to set this down as like rigid set in stone law. I'm just saying for our purposes tonight, for me to educate and teach you on your intuitive system, I'm going to name being psychic as this. Being intuitive, however, is I hear guidance. Notice the word guidance. And that guidance is a verb. It tells me, it instructs me, it guides me to make a choice, create something, take an action, say yes, say no, say maybe, say not yet. I'm guided. So intuition to me is about verb energy. It's about getting this sense of heaven, your environment. I mean, even your own five senses are taking in guidance. Oh, it's super sunny out today. I can see that with my eyes. I probably should put sunscreen on so I don't go out and get burned if I'm going on a bike ride or whatever. So your intuitive system, similarly, in the energy senses you have, gives you information that is directional, that it engages you in development of something, that oftentimes also is about saving your life or pivoting or shifting in a certain way. And so now let's bring them both together. Because when I do readings on people, I'm doing both. I'm feeling things and I'm getting information. So part of me is pushing my field out further than my own with my empathy and my sensitivity. And then another part of me is wired into like this hotline of data and getting information that way at the same time. And both come together and boom, now you've got a really good intuitive psychic system online. But I wanted to break them apart, bring them together so you understand yourself, so that you can understand, is this a psychic energy? Sometimes you get psychic energy with no direction. That person's depressed. Okay. Guess I'll just keep moving on. Sometimes you get psychic energy with an instruction. Whoa, I feel that person's depressed. And then your angel whispers in your ear, yeah, go tell them they're awesome. And have a great day. And just say, the universe loves you. You're awesome. That's your instruction. Go. See what I'm at? So I want you to take what I'm saying. I want you to start playing with this in your life. What's psychic to you? What's intuitive? Now, back to shadow work. If I have trauma that's unresolved, and I'll give you an example of a very famous psychic that used to be on TV all the time. And I remember watching this particular psychic give readings to people on live TV and kind of shuddering to myself like, oh God. But this particular psychic would tell people that she read that their father or mother was an evil spirit because their father or mother had maybe abused them or abandoned them or something. And the truth is, intuitive truth is, your parents aren't evil or good. They're typically wounded in some way that, and by no means lets anyone off the hook for responsibility for actions or anything. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying at a soul level, at a psycho-spiritual level, psychological level, people get wounded, and out of their pain, they inflict pain on other people. Does that make them an evil spirit? No. My father was incredibly abusive to me, was an alcoholic, and ended up, in the end, taking his own life. I never saw him as an evil man. I saw him as a wounded man. But that comes from me integrating trauma and doing deep shadow work on myself and being able to see with the eyes of my soul. Because that's what intuition's about, seeing with the eyes of your soul. So my father, I don't villainize him, but someone who has not done that inner work, they could get guidance and it would then get biased over into a certain language like, oh, they're an evil spirit. Now, my point is, you do this all the time. And what I want you to take away from this is that it distorts your intuitive system. It'll distort your intuitive clarity. You will not perceive clearly if guidance is hitting a wound and your adapted, let's say, defense strategies that come out of that wound for you. And when we aren't able to hear guidance clearly in a direct kind of communication, think of it this way. So if I'm getting guidance about my life today, hey, let's use an example. Maybe you're thinking of starting a business or something, and you're thinking of going back to school, or you're thinking about some creative new project you want to begin, or whatever. That you get the inspiration. It comes through your intuitive inspirational system, and then it hits your wounds. And in your wounds, you hear these voices. You're not good enough for that. You're too old to go back to school. You don't have what it takes to be an entrepreneur. You get me? So that guidance, if you think about this, is not in present time. It just looped back to all of your history, time warped, and then came back with a sort of morphed and altered instruction. You no longer hear the direct voice of, yeah, go back to school. Who cares if you're 45? Why not? In 4 years, you can have an undergrad, and hey, if you want to go for 10 years from now, you'll have a PhD. You in? And you'll love what you're doing. Go. But it hits the cultures, and then it hits the cultural messages and the cultural biases and the cultural crap. I want you from now on, this is what it means to move from 3D to multi-D intuition. And let me just breakout session here. You have to understand all the things that make you you. There are so many forces that make you you. So you're born, you have your family DNA, and that is both physical and psychic. You have ancestral, generational, psychic DNA, in as much as you have physical DNA. Both begin shaping your self-concept after you're born. Then let's branch beyond that. Now you're in a society that has its laws, its norms, its thinking, its belief systems, its perhaps religious traditions that also begin to shape you. Then you go to your culture, or let's just go to your country. And then its ethos and its belief systems begin to imprint and shape you and start to shape identity. And then it goes all the way out, all the way through your culture, and it ends up at the world level. That's how complex your whole intuitive system is, and that's how much influences you every single day. And when you're looking for intuitive guidance, your guidance team has to somehow get through all of that to get to a soul true north, SOLESOUL, for you to go, all right, in spite of a misogynist patriarchal culture, I am still destined to become the #1 talk show in history because I have the soul agreement of Oprah Winfrey. So I'm going to listen. I'm going to listen to that. And I know the voices out there and the voices of racism and the voices of everything else that comes with me being Oprah Winfrey are going to constantly blare in this ear while my soul is trying to get me over here. And all of us are negotiating that all the time. So to move from 3D would just say all that you're actually trying to intuitively access or get a coordinate on is what you can see in maybe the sphere of your daily life, and you don't look beyond to ask different questions. Like, for example, how has culture wounded me? Most of you have dealt with family wounding, I'm sure, because it's so immediate and has to be addressed right away as you're growing up and trying to become all you can become and live in a way where you're connected to others and yourself. You're going to meet those family wounds almost right away. But how many of you watching me tonight have ever thought, how did culture wound me? How is it still wounding me? Where have I made those wounds identity? And then you turn to your guidance team, you turn to your inner self, you turn to God or whatever your spiritual concepts are, and you ask for guidance. Not realizing that even the question you're posing for intuitive guidance itself has in it wounded identity. It's that part of you actually asking for guidance. And your guidance team's going, well, what do we do with this? So you're not ever, and this is a word I'm going to use a lot, so I'm going to define it right now, but you'll never see everything that exists in the holographic grid. It's impossible. Because it's so much bigger than you and there's too much data. What you are guided to see is what's in that grid. And by holographic, let me define that. I mean that there are many dimensions in this life. So I just named a lot of them. Culture is a dimension. Society is a dimension. Political parties are a dimension now. Tribalism is part of that. There's so many things that become part of how we perceive, how we feel, how we process information in our lives. We all have our own little tribes. We have groups we're part of. We have family systems we come from. All of this matters. So when you're looking to get, let's say, a holographic read on a situation, well, then go holographic. And the other thing you have to be mindful of is, what are my biases here? What would I not be willing to see because of them? I think it's such a teachable moment in terms of the political energy and landscape of life right now, because so many people from all political tribes won't see the other's point of view, and they're not seeing intuitively, because you can't do that. If you're tribal, you don't see with the intuitive perceptual apparatus that's wired in for you. You see through the tribe and its limits and its perceptual limits. Now take from that and go to anything you're connected to. So when you go to holographic, let's say, intuition, what you're saying now is, okay, I got a decision to make. I've got plans to make. I've got a life change I'm looking at. I think I'm hearing guidance. It's telling me to zig or zag. You sit down with yourself and you do an inventory of all these different levels of your reality. And they all matter. And you become willing to see without bias. When I do readings on people, I go in with like a blank slate. I don't go in with any idea of what I'm going to see in a client per se. I go in with what their concerns are, what they want from me. And as I begin doing these live on this show, eventually, you'll see this. I go in, I'll hear your concerns, and then that gives me the door into you and into your psyche. But once I'm in, I'm blank. I'm waiting for data to come. I'm not going in with some idea of who you are or who I think you are. That's called projection, not perception. So holographic intuition is perceptive, not projective. I want some homework for y'all. I want you to start to watch and just get curious with your intuitive system. Am I projecting or perceiving, and how do I know the difference? How do you know the difference? One quick, let's say, key I could give you is that projection carries an emotional charge. Perception does not. So if I just see something, it's just neutral. I'm just seeing. And I like to use this word. Perception sees things from a much more technical place. You start to look at the karma of it all as a technician, not as a judge or jury, not someone with a bias that has a moral axe to grind, but rather, I'm just looking at things like a karmic technician here. These forces do this, and the consequence is that. Both in yourself and in the world. This is part of becoming engaged in holographic intuition. Now, it takes some time, takes some shadow work to start to know, am I projecting, am I perceiving? And sometimes you're doing both. Yeah, it's both and sometimes. Your responsibility for clarity intuitively is to look at the projection and go, okay, well, here's the projection. Why is it there? All right, understood. Now, what am I actually seeing? What am I actually seeing? So when we move through shadow work into, let's say, more voltage in terms of our perception intuitively, you also will activate other types of intuition. So I've named kind of the ones that I think a lot of you probably relate to or have experienced in your life. Certainly you've all had a creative inspiration. You've had some creative direction that just kind of came to you. Maybe it came through a passion. And here's the thing. Now let's bring this into the complexity of your intuitive system. As guidance speaks to you, you will have it speak in various ways unique to your own system. So this is where you look at the clairs, they call them, like the clairaudient, the clairsentient, the clairvoyant, the different ways that we oftentimes get intuitive data. I'm very much an intuitive thinker, so I get information almost like speaking in my ear when I get intuitive information, and it's very fast. And then second to that for me is going to be just I get clairvoyant stuff. I sort of see stuff symbolically in my mind, sometimes literally. That's number 2. Number 3 for me is my emotional intuitive system kicks in. I'll feel something in there. So I want to now introduce that all of you will hear and sense and feel through your energy senses. Sometimes your energy senses will communicate through your actual 5 senses some way. Or in your internal clairs, you'll also have, maybe you'll hear something, maybe you'll sort of see something, maybe you taste something in your mouth, maybe, and it's your psychic senses almost manifesting through the 5 senses. That said, at this level of intuition that I've introduced so far, that brings you to the door of shadow work. Once you're in the shadow work process long enough, you start to get to other layers and levels of intuitive perception that I think are in some ways more cosmic, certainly more in the territory of soul agreement, soul contract stuff. And I would language a lot of this like dream intuition. How many of you have worked with your dreams? You go to sleep and your psyche starts to speak to you. Sometimes you'll have a loved one who's passed over show up in a dream, and you know it's them because the energy of the dream is different. It's not just your subconscious spitting crap out from the day, which it will do. And you wake up going, what was that? I'm not even going to bother trying to know. delete, purge, thank you. But dream intuition is a powerful conduit. In terms of sometimes you get life guidance, sometimes you'll dream something about somebody, and a lot of times it comes in symbolic form. Now let me talk a little bit about why intuitive data oftentimes comes symbolically and not literally. Symbols are something that have the capacity of containing holographic information, which means symbols contain information that can relate to multiple levels of reality at the same time. So if you get a symbol in a dream, it's speaking to many layers of you, and all in simultaneity, and yet it does still have direction and specificity to each layer. That's why when you do dream work, sometimes you will spend a month working through a dream, and you'll just keep getting more information as you go. Symbols hold holographic information, meaning information from many dimensions of who you are, and many dimensions of your life, and many dimensions of your reality, and many directions in those dimensions of reality. Now, when you start to work with this more, you will then, through dream intuition, evolve more toward what I call destiny, holographic destiny intuition. And that's sort of where I do readings from. So if I'm doing a reading on somebody, it's coming from this whole holographic database of stuff. And I allow myself to be guided to specific information most helpful to my client based on their concerns. I'm not there to read every single thing I'd be there for a year or more reading each of you, because there's so much data in your whole life archive is there. And then I've got your ancestors, and then I got your psychic family DNA, and then I've got the cultures that you're from, and then, I've got trauma that's ancestral that hasn't been integrated in your system I'm looking at, that's influencing you, that's making you zigzag and, hate yourself, or I don't know. So there's all of these layers. And I just want to impress upon you, and I don't want to create, and there's more. I mean, I could just keep going and covering even more manifestations and ways that intuition will speak to you. I want to give you enough of a map. Why? So you can start to know your own system. It takes practice, and it takes presence, and it takes openness, it takes shadow work, and it takes some time to kind of get dialed into where you can really trust your own intuitive channel, your own intuitive system. My encouragement, especially for tonight, is to be willing to move beyond just 3D. And I think that when you look at what's happening in the world, and you look at what's happening in politics, and you look at what's happening in all sort of sectors where we are challenged in life, the one thing I can see in common about a lot of it is a lot of it's pressuring us to collapse down to 2D, where we get polarized into either or. Intuition exists in a realm that a lot of times is both and. So if you start to think in terms of either or, I would take a pause and go, wait a minute, I'm shutting down my intuitive clarity. Because oftentimes intuition is going to want to talk to me in both and. So I want to introduce you to a phenomenon that happens when you do not have a capacity to hear the truth directly, in whatever form it comes. And that's called the trickster. So one of the things that will manifest for all of us that I've seen in so many client readings and in myself is that we will activate what I call the trickster side of our intuitive system. What that means is, if there's a truth, if there's something that you've just got to know, your guidance team's like, look, homegirl needs to know this today. And you, for whatever reason, you just can't do it. Let's say you're in a marriage and you're being cheated on. And you know, but you don't want to know. And your guidance team is like, look, you need to know this. And you're like, yeah, but I don't want to know this. Or let's say you meet somebody that they're so hot. And you're like, damn, baby, this is the one, right? But you're not getting a read. You're getting a 1D read. That's just their appearance. But you've loaded and projected everything else into that, and it's projection, not perception, to start to create a story about how they're the one for you. And I'm being extreme here, but it's to make a point. You're not reading, you're projecting. And let's say your guidance team's like, your own soul's going, oh, hell no. I'm so not into this guy or this woman. No way. Do you even know what a train wreck they are? They are not right for you. They're no. And you override that because, hey, they have money, they're good looking, they're whatever it is. And if I'm with them, then I'm enough. Let's throw that in there. And you start to override your own clarity. You start to override your own voice. And then the next thing that happens is the trickster goes, okay, here's what we're going to do. we're going to do this big, girl. I'm going to make you think that this is the one for you, the soulmate, the twin flame, the other half, whatever else you got. I'm going to trick you into thinking that's exactly right. Yes, girl, go. So you jump in, and it's not that you weren't already told they weren't right for you. You were. Within the first probably 10 minutes of meeting this person. Rather, you didn't want to hear that. You did not want to hear that. So your intuition goes to trickster mode and goes, okay, the only way we're getting through this is just tricking them, so let's just go big. Let's jack this up. And the next thing you know, give it a month, maybe a week, maybe 2 months if you're lucky, if the trickster lets you hang in that long, and they ghost you. They do something so outrageous that harms you. They just disappear. You find out they're dating someone else. Something of that nature that shocks you into going, wait a minute, I thought they were the one. My oracle said that. My astrologer said that. My psychic said that. And the trickster will hijack all of them. All of them. My angel cards, whatever you do, your intuitive tools, whatever you use, will get hijacked too. Only to get you to go, you know what? Clearly, what happens is my answer. And I can either stay in a state of disassociation from the answer, or I can start to look at how I didn't hear the no the first 10 minutes when I met this person. Now, That's just one example. And not all reads play out that way. Sometimes someone is the right person for you because you have a lesson to learn. And even in that, there's a lesson to learn. So I want to be careful about using right or wrong as words here, but to illustrate this in the trickster function of your intuitive system, I want you to know that you're better off just going, I'm willing to know the truth immediately. And sometimes, in spite of our best intentions and our apparent willingness, we just aren't ready. We can't do it. We're not, and we got to go through a little trickster energy. So I want you to feel out for yourself what resonates out of what I just said, where you've felt tricked. And I want you to know your intuition was actually spot on all along. It just flipped to the trickster side because it didn't have any other option. The trickster, what does it do? It tricks you into the truth that you just wouldn't go near any other way. So once again, coming back to what I said in the beginning of the show, a lot of times from my eyes, intuition is just about telling the truth. And when you don't do that, from what I've seen in 20 years of this work, you really will suffer. And I've been on the cross with y'all. Oh yeah. But that's what, I think learning how to listen directly gives us. It gives us a chance to not have to go through the incredible self-sabotage that sometimes we will experience because we just wouldn't listen. So I want to kind of start to wind this down a little bit, and I'm going to let you all sort of be with this information and to kind of summate where we've been. I want you to start to think of your intuitive system holographically. There's many different aspects to it. Start to explore them. Explore your emotional intuition. Explore your survival gut intuition if you've been cut off from that. Explore your creative inspirational intuitive channels. Explore your dream intuition. Explore your even analytical diagnostic intuition. This is what medical intuitives oftentimes rely on, is this capacity. I think all doctors rely on this. They go in and they have a patient with symptoms and they have to kind of feel out, assess, and get guided as to what it actually might be, because it could be anything creating those symptoms. They get a hunch or a gut instinct about what it is. Then you've got this level of, let's say, engaging at this bigger level of knowing. And I'm going to wind this down into a couple more things about how your intuition works, okay? First, I got to take a drink of my water. In addition to all the tracks I just laid down, I hope you guys are picking up what I'm putting down. Intuition works in a process fashion most of the time. So most people think of intuition only as being revelatory, where you get this vision of something and then all of a sudden all is availed to you about your life, or all is availed to you about a situation, and oftentimes that's very, very rare. I have had, let's say, revelation or revelatory intuition happen to me at certain junctures in my life when it was supposed to, but similar to most of you, most of my intuitive direction for myself in my own life comes in what I call process guidance, which means that intuition as a guiding force is guiding you through a process. A lot of times, so let me give you an example. Let's say you are wanting to know, we'll go back to relationships because this is something I think we've all done. You want to know if someone's right for you. And right meaning, there's a plan for you guys together. There's a destiny together. There's they're a good match. There's compatibility. I mean, there's a lot of things that get thrown out here, but just to get you in the zone of right. So you go to a psychic, you go to intuitive, or you try to read it for yourself, or you try to get a sense of it, and you ask for noun guidance. You want to know a yes or no. So you go to a psychic, your palm reader, or your runes, or you start looking at pebbles on the sand. And you're like, is this person, or your tea leaves, and is this person right for me? That is a question that actually will summon the trickster. Because what you're looking for in this sense, is yes or no. When intuition, most of the time, will say, you met this person for a reason, and there's a process here you need to engage. There isn't a yes or no on offer right now. We're not giving you that answer, but we'll give you a step in the process. We'll guide you in a step of the process. So a lot of times you will be asking of your own intuitive system questions that actually are not lined up for yes or no answers. And let's just go back to the relationship question. What if you asked it this way? What in me is scheduled to shift and develop and change in the process of creating a relationship with this person I'm dating? I'll tell you what, you will get the clearest effing answer for that. Your guides are going to go, woo! We love this question. It's a process guidance question, and we can answer that. Boom. And then you hear your intuitive system say, well, you're really going to get a nice meet and greet with your fears of abandonment. And the child in you, the child archetype inside of you, is going to get a nice meet and greet with the crappy way you self-parent yourself now. And you're also going to meet in this the way that you've projected your parents onto this person you're dating. And instead of the lover in you meeting them on the date, it's mostly been your child looking for mommy or daddy. That's how clear and direct a reading can be. If you frame yourself in the question in a process-oriented way. You see all the time people consulting psychics and this and that, and with these yes or no answers, and half the time I already know. I can see it in the ether that the yes or no isn't on offer. What's on offer is, hey, what about the design of meeting them, the synchronicity of that being about your own empowerment and transformation? Whether they're the one in a long-term capacity, you'll know en route of dating and relating. Don't focus on that because you met this person to evolve out of who you are into someone else for yourself. So we're not answering that. You want to talk? Well, no, we'll talk, but we're going to talk about what are you willing to change about yourself? What trauma are you willing to integrate? What dragons are you willing to hug as part of becoming a lover? Someone who can lovingly engage others and life. So I want you to evaluate. Are you in process guidance? What kind of questions are you asking of your intuitive system? Are they yes or no? Is that effing you up? Are you getting, because here's what happens when you keep pushing for that yes or no and it's not available, it's not permitted. The trickster goes, oh, just tell them something. Yes, they're the one. No, and yet it's not, it's in a sense of accuracy. It's not an accurate answer. So I hope that makes sense to everybody. You'll save yourself a ton of suffering just by realizing most of our lives, we are in process guidance. It's bit by bit, getting guided here, getting guided there, bit by bit. It's not the revelation crap that Hollywood's blown up and even other people in the intuitive arts have, I think, edified inappropriately. What matters is you go, you know what? I'm willing to engage my intuitive system as a spiritually evolving, maturing adult. And also in a way where any question I'm asking of my angels comes from an orientation of self-responsibility and a willingness to change and a willingness to do shadow work and a willingness to just jump in this gig called life. So you got revelation guidance and you also have process guidance. A lot of times what I've seen is you'll be in process guidance, and all of a sudden, boom, then you'll get a revelation guidance. And that's typically how the cycles of that kind of intuitive flow work for me. I'll get revelation guidance and I'll be working through stuff and working and involving myself into a more compassionate, loving man and person and more intuitively aware and awake person. And then out of that, I hit a tipping point. I call them tipping points of destiny. And then boom, I'm revealed, like this whole new door opens and this whole new dimension of opportunity arrives. And in that, there's a lot of revelation. And then the process starts again, and this is the nature of how we evolve into all that we were born to be. So, my dear people, I'm going to wrap this up. I want to mention a couple things. I've got a brand new website, ohotto.com, ohotto.com. If you'd like to get on my newsletter, get on it now and you get a free 2-hour workshop called Awakening Your Intuitive Edge. You will love it, especially if you love tonight. And next week, I'm coming back with a show, same time, same place. And it's going to be looking at the 5 things, the 5 things that block your intuition and how to get those out of your way. I kind of covered a few of those tonight, but we're going to go into other stuff next week as well. I am just ravenous for your comments. So there's many ways you can communicate those to me. Facebook is a great place on the Facebook live feed, also Crowdcast, and my website. You can comment there as well. So I will be releasing a schedule for these shows in September in the next week. I haven't actually finalized that yet. And if you want to stay informed on that, great way to do that is also on my newsletter. And my newsletter is just somewhere where I'll just, talk about stuff and do stuff that I just wouldn't do anywhere else. So I do plan on eventually launching a podcast on iTunes for this particular work. And this would be on it, this particular show as a podcast. So keep your eyes open for that. I'll let you know when all that comes up. But I will be live next week, 6:30 Mountain Time. So that's 5:30 in the States here, 5:30 Pacific Time, 7:30 Central, 8:30 Eastern Time. So glad to be back. And it's been a pleasure to just get the wheels turning. We're going to go week to week and just take different angles off here. And then we're going to do live readings too. It's going to be great. So I'm going to bid you all an awesome good night and look forward to all your feedback. And I will see you guys next week. In the meantime, sit with all this stuff and just sort of, see where it lands in you and let it move whichever way it does. And let me know how it impacts you. Let me know what your thoughts are. I want to hear from you. I want to interact here. So you can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm everywhere, YouTube. And these will eventually also be live streaming to YouTube at some point. I'll keep you posted. All right, everybody. Namaste. Now get your holographic intuition on. You're so dynamic. And so be with it and get into your dynamic intuitive system and see what can happen. All right. I'll see you guys next week.